Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janssen Evelyn. I work in the Office of the County Exec within the Department of County Administration as an Assistant Chief Administrative Officer with Howard County. I'm fortunate that one of the offices or agencies within my portfolio that I work with is the Office of Human Rights and Equity. And within that space, I've gotten an opportunity to meet lots of fascinating leaders, lots of residents from the community, and we wanted to use this time. One, I want to first give a shout out to Marla Moore. The idea of the first virtual or the first Expo, the Office of Human Rights, Howard County Government, also the County Exec, that this was her brainchild, and I applaud her and I affirm her for doing this. When she first presented it to me, I was giddy because I shared in the vision, and I look forward to a day next year when we can do this in person, because like all of you, I am the Zoom fatigue, WebEx fatigue is very real. But again, Marla, thank you for this. And the theme of the Office of Human Rights and Equity's Black History Month was honoring the past, seizing the moment, and shaping the future. I want to kind of begin there to, dig down a bit on what that means for us as community leaders, as activists in this moment, as we try to chart a new future. First, I'd be remiss if I didn't let everyone, this is being recorded, everyone. I'll make sure you all are aware this is being recorded, and this will likely be shared on the Office of Human Rights and Equity's social media channels, so that because this is the middle of the workday, people can view it at a later, more convenient time. But I want to first have everyone that's present please introduce themselves. I'm just going to go based on who I have on my screen. So person right next to me, I see on the screen, would be Ramona Brown Carter. Please introduce yourself. You're muted.
Is this better?
You're unmuted now. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ramona Brown Carter. I'm one of the co-chairs of Cove. We'll talk about that a little later. And I work for the Baltimore County Human Relations Commission. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Walker. I serve as the president of the African American Community Roundtable of Howard County. My full-time position, I am the deputy pastor at Celebration Church here in Columbia.
Thank you for joining us both, Mrs. Brown Carter, Mr. Walker. Towanda Brown.
Good evening. This is Towanda Brown. I am the chair of the Council of Elders at the Black Community of Howard County. Thank you for inviting us to be here today.
Well, so Scott, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Scott Marco. I am the current chair of the Howard County Human Rights Commission.
Tracey Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracey Williams. I am the current chair of the Dr. Martin Luther King Holiday Commission. This will be my last month in that role. And I am also, my day job is as a pupil personnel worker with Howard County Public School System.
Thank you for your service in both of your roles. Ms. Zhao, you're muted.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Janssen. Nice seeing you again. My name is Cove. I serve on Howard County's Human Rights Commission along with Scott. And I am the appointed member for the Employee Council for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Baltimore County Government. Thank you.
So you must know Ramona well.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Mr. Flowers. Are you able to turn your camera on, Mr. Flowers? It's okay if you can't.
Can you see me now?
I can see you along with your busy background.
Oh, I don't know.
George
I don't know how to
Washington
do
Carver Farm. We'll get to that in a bit.
I'm Willie Flowers. I'm with the NAACP, the oldest and the boldest, the baddest, and all that. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So I just want to do a full disclosure. I want to make sure everyone is aware. So I'm meeting virtually Towanda today. Everyone else I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to meet in person and to even watch from afar. But I want to make sure everyone is aware. I work very closely with Mr. Flowers with the NAACP, and including with the garden that he has in his background. So I'm going to try my darndest to make sure everyone is having equal access, equal opportunity, and Larry, use your pastoral tool if at any point you feel and chastise me accordingly. But I want to, again, I mentioned earlier what the theme of Office of Human Rights and Equity in Howard County's government, as we commemorate this Black History Month, it was honoring the past, seizing the moment, and shaping the future. Pastor Walker, I'd like to start with you. Like, when you hear that term, like what in there jumps out, and what in there is most critical in the midst of this moment that we are having in this country with regards to systemic awakening or people all of a sudden being woke?
Well, so I'd first like to start off by saying, if we're going to honor the past, we have to recognize that Black excellence does not begin in America. It begins in Africa and in the African diaspora. Honoring the past, those of us who are children of descendants of formerly enslaved people are honoring the legacy of the shoulders that we stand on, because those were the people whose blood, sweat, and tears not only built this country, but provided the very backbone and the strength for us to be here today. And when I look at every generation, there seems to be a seminal moment that calls for some action towards progress in equity and social justice. And certainly we have seen over the last year, if not longer, that call, that clarion call in our times today. And I look forward with great hope. I think that we have more allies coming in who are being woke and seeing the injustices. You can't sit back and watch a video with a police officer holding his knee, draining the very life out of a human being, and not, if you have any sense of humanity, you can't watch that and not see that as an injustice, and then tie that into the systemic injustices that have been going on against the people for well over 400 years.
I apologize, everyone else, and that I let out with a pastor. So Ramona, I'd like to ask you that exact same question. When you hear that theme, I'm sure it's going to echo a lot of Larry's sentiment. But when you hear that theme, is there anything that jumps out to you?
What jumps out to me first is the thought of my personal life as a mom of 3 African American boys. And when I think about how we're raising them, it gives homage to how my husband and I were raised and how we were taught to treat people. And even when we're not being treated the way we want to be treated, we still sometimes show a little bit more respect than often given to us. Our elders have endured so much, and they taught us how to do it with dignity. They taught us how to do it with respect. However, now we're in an era where our young people are now ready to do more than what they were willing to do and what we are willing to do. And so now it is finding a balance, finding what makes us work together. And because for me, again, it's okay for you to protest. it's okay for you to feel the way, because as African Americans, we have a grievance with America that's deeply rooted. Like the Pastor Walker said, it goes all the way back to Africa and goes across the waters, and how we were treated when we got into this country. But now, how do we utilize the tools that we have to become more effective and trustworthy citizens so that we can be heard and not just looked at?
So, Ms. Brown, I'm going to actually segue to you, but following a point that Ramona made, and this is also for me an exercise in restraint. Many of you know I have lots of thoughts and opinions. Definitely something I'm not ever shy of sharing, but when you're moderating, it's not about my thoughts or opinions. But she indicated, and I know you are intimately involved with the Howard County African American Council of Elders. How do you respond, if anything, to her point that that this current generation in this moment wants to do, I guess, more than what the, I would say, prior generations have done? I guess in your role as a leader in the African American Council of Elders, how does that point resonate with you?
We always discuss going back and looking at our history, because history repeats itself. So one of the things that I'm finding with our young people is that they believe that they're doing something new that we haven't done before. And I really would like to see us organize and be wiser than what has happened in the past. We really haven't had a strong organizer since Martin Luther King. And instead of us coming together and looking at the multiple problems and facets of the problems, we throw all our eggs into one basket instead of using our resources to look at how to be smart and attack this strategically. So I believe that our young folks need guidance from those of us that have been around for a while to bring some knowledge forth of how we should address and attack a problem. We can't keep going on emotion. We can't keep going on reaction, and we can't keep going on politics. We have to go on foundation of what is needed to be able to move us forward to achieve the goals that we want to achieve.
So, Mr. Flowers, I know one of the things you're known for as a community organizer. Following, I don't want to say Towanda, Mrs. Brown's comment with respects to, there are lots of lessons learned in terms of effective organization and strategy that hasn't really happened since Dr. Martin Luther King. What is it that, in your opinion, the Black community is missing with regards to organizing, if in fact you agree with that sentiment? You muted.
I think that that's kind of a misnomer in that organizing, I just call it surviving. Our people had networks that were in our faces during that period of time. The Black church was at the center of it, and it went out from there. And so I think that's different now because of our success as I guess a world community and giving options to people. The survival techniques were differently, so I don't think it's not impossible to do. And I think that we certainly lean too much on mainstream for what we need to have and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, if we got nestled into, I just think, since we talk about looking back, I think that as long as we teach our sons to honor and respect the Black woman in every way, respect, protect, love, admire, adore, that will solve 99% of our problems. And once they do that, they get up from that spot and lead themselves. But if you're born to a Black African female, that's who you honor, respect, and adore. And then you spend your life protecting our kingdom. And that's what I think the solution is. Now, that's my romantic side of it. But as it pertains to this conversation about community organizing and comparing it to 50 years ago, we don't have that same type of structure, but we do have the dynamic reality of the history of the Black church. And I think that the notion that we have to be organizers is kind of, I don't think is useful here in the way that you're using it. But I do think that if we are all on the same page about what we need for our survival, then we all have roles in that.
You talk about if we're all on the same page for our survival, but like every other community, the African diaspora is made up of a composite of so many rich and distinct cultures. Even if you're concentrating solely in the Western Hemisphere, even within U.S. African diaspora, how do we? And I guess this question is to you, Ms. Williams. How do we get to a space where we're even operating from the same principles in terms of what the priorities are? Because there is, I hear so many different terms that are used, so many different focuses and priorities. I see a deep intersectionality between all of them, but I'm curious as to how do we get to that? How do we get to the space where we are operating in one accord?
That is the $1,000,000 question. Yeah, because you're absolutely right. We all have a similar goal in mind, but we have different ways of looking at community organizing. Like, I personally feel like we have to address the intersectionality of the whole thing, and community organizing means dealing with those who are impoverished. It means dealing with going back and bringing people with you. I believe in that grassroots, go back and get involved where you're needed and work to solve those particular issues. It's really important for us to unite as African Americans so that we can train and join our young people who want to continue the struggle. But we, as the more seasoned leaders, really need to come together and decide what it means to organize in the community and bring people forward.
Okay.
So I know I'm dancing around your question. But,
no, this is Tracey. This is a very, the things that we're talking about are so weighty, and it's not going to be fully, what's the word? Discussed and expanded on in a discussion that's on an hour parameter. This is something very deep and, in my opinion, world building. So, but I cut you off. So please continue.
Yeah, but ultimately we have to take it step by step, community by community, and we have to look at reaching out to all members of our community, not just those who have established themselves and are financially doing well, but reaching out to bring everybody on board, even people who are struggling, and we need to do more for each other.
All right, so to that point, I want to make sure, because Marla had collected a wide variety of organizations here in Howard County, and I want to get back to some of these questions in a moment, but I want to also make sure that everyone has an opportunity to talk about how their organizations work towards that mission, which is, in my opinion, ultimately of equality. So, Tracey, if you could quickly talk about what the Martin Luther King Commission, and you've been on it for how many years now?
Oh gosh, I think I've been on it for 7 or 8 years now.
Okay, so if you can talk about that, and then I would
excuse me, I'm sorry, let me interject. Hi, everybody. Some of you have PowerPoints, some of you don't, but here's the thing. I'm editing the piece together. I'm even going to cut out this voice after it's over. So in the interest of making really great programming, which is what's happening now, that's really spontaneous and a genuine conversation, answer Janssen's questions, talk about your organization, and you can send me the PowerPoint so when you're talking right later, I can incorporate that presentation. Does that sound great to everybody? This is a living, breathing conversation, please, let it flow the way it's flowing. You never see this. It's great.
Yes, Sensei. But yeah, Tracey, talk about your work on the MLK Commission, and then I would like to hear from the Human Rights Commission members before we go around and talk to the other community-based organizations.
Okay, well, the Human Rights Commission, of course, was created to bring about appropriate activities and ceremonies surrounding Dr. King's birthday. And that—
You mean the Martin Luther King Commission, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And it was initially developed to celebrate his birthday, and then it was expanded to include a day of service. And so, as you know, Dr. King was very big on service and reaching out and helping others. So we have the commission is based on doing that. And this year we have gone above and beyond. We not only celebrated Dr. King in an amazing way through a virtual celebration, and I do recommend that if you have not seen the celebration, please go to the Human Rights website so that you can see the performance of our youth. But we also expanded the service projects under our day of service, and it's no longer a day of service. We did service throughout and are continuing to do service. We have set up a number of food pantries, pop-up pantries around the county where we're feeding families. As you know, food insecurity is a major deal. It was already an issue, and the pandemic has made it an even greater issue. So we have done several pop-up pantries. We did our day of service where we had the National Panhellenic Council and the Jewish Federation. They went to grocery stores and collected over 5,000 pounds of food. We collected over $15,000 in money to support the food bank. We also did virtual online information about building economic wealth, and that is something that we definitely need in our communities. We also did listening sessions for teens and on how to create peace in the world, as well as adult sessions on how to create peace in the world. We also did an unbreathable film screening to talk about ecological justice and how we need to save our world from trash and plastic and all of the awful things that are happening to it. So we are all about social justice in every realm.
Mm-hmm. And the Human Rights Commissioner members?
Hi, thank you, Janssen. So we do have a PowerPoint that Marla will put up on the screen. But just to walk through it, my name again is Scott Marco. I'm the chair of the Howard County Human Rights Commission. I'm joined today by one of my fellow commissioners, Kui Zhao, and we will be providing you a little bit of information about what the Human Rights Commission is and what we do. So the history of the Human Rights Commission, you can go to slide 3, Marla. So the Human Rights Commission was established in 1969 by the County Council and the County Executive, and it's made up of 11 members who are all Howard County citizens. They almost live in the county, and we try to represent the diversity of Howard County citizens. So we make a great effort when recommending new commissioners to become is that we have representatives from a wide array of races, religions, national origins, etc. And then we also have one non-voting student member who is also part of the commission. You can go to the next slide, Marla. Thank you. So our vision, established last year, we came up with a vision, mission, and purpose statement. So our vision is to create a county where human rights of all are respected and protected. And to meet that vision, our mission is to, and you can go to the next slide, Marla, is to cultivate a community where the ideals of equity, inclusion, respect, and non-discrimination are interwoven into everyday life. And I would very much like to emphasize equity as one of our 4 core pillars of our mission statement. We spent a lot of time this past year and at our most recent annual retreat talking about equity and how that's different than equality, and how important it is to kind of meet people where they are, and provide the resources for different groups and different organizations and people of different backgrounds to kind of level them up to have an equal playing field, but not necessarily equality for everyone, but give people that need more, give them more. And then going on to the next slide. So our purpose, which is that we will, as the Human Rights Commission, we will protect and promote human rights by engaging and educating the community, by studying and investigating human rights issues, by proposing and improving policies on human rights, and by interpreting and enforcing the Howard County Human Rights Code. So one of our, yes.
I want to jump in just so that, because I want to make sure that we only have 30 minutes left, and rather than just, and Marla had indicated she could integrate the slide throughout the conversation, but I want to, in line of your mission, vision, and your purpose, what are ways that the Human Rights Commission are effectuating or working towards that mission, vision, and purpose?
So you very much dovetailed into the next part of our presentation that Kui was going to give, which is talking about some of the new committees that we've formed for this year to study different issues, to work on these different issues that we felt are the most important ones to deal with the politics of what's going on now, and with the with what's sort of the hot issues. So, for example, last year, our committees focused on several things. We focused on immigration issues, and we just issued a large report at the end of last year about the Immigration Detention Center at the Jessup Prison, and about adding immigration status as a protected class to the Howard County Human Rights Code, and made some recommendations to the county executive and county council. I would encourage you, if you have some time, to take a look at the cover letter and the report that is on our website. We also did a lot of work around census and voting last year to encourage underrepresented communities to get counted, because that only comes around every 10 years and it affects a lot of county funding, a lot of federal funding for the county. We wanted to make sure that all groups are properly counted. And we spent a lot of time working on hate crimes last year, which have been on the rise for the past 2, 3, 4 years, and trying to study those issues and come up with recommendations on how to deal with that. And I'll turn it over to Kui, and she can talk about a little bit of what we are proposing to work on this coming year.
Hi, would we still have the slides or not? If not, that's okay. No problem at all. Yeah, I just want to briefly summarize what Human Rights Commission does for our county citizens. Our commission meets monthly, and our meetings are open to the public. But due to COVID, all the meetings have been online using the county's WebEx platform. And our meeting starts at 7 p.m. on the third Thursday each month, except for August. And our commission also support the community when it is outside the realm of the Office of Human Rights and Equity. The best example is the newly established Asian American and Pacific Work Group for the County Executive's order on the Lunar New Year Eve, which was February the 11th, 2021. A commissioner, one of the fellow commissioners, actually sits on the AAPI work group on behalf of the Human Rights Commission. And the commission also files complaints based on pattern of or practices of discrimination, and everybody probably could recall what happened in 2016. The Human Rights Office and also Human Rights Commission found evidence of discrimination of a former sheriff officer, and also the Human Rights Commission conducts hearings when complaints complainants appeal Office of Human Rights and Ethics decision about cases. And there are 4 standing committees within the Human Rights Commission. The first is a work committee reviews nominations and recommends individuals or organizations who are the most dedicated to services for the underrepresented or vulnerable populations. The Legislative Commission is what Scott sits on and also chairs. The commission reviews and summarizes legislative bills at the federal, state, and local levels pertinent to human rights issues on for example, housing, employment, healthcare, education, and so forth. Nominating commission, it reviews and implications, conducts interviews, and recommends the best candidate to the county executive's office for consideration. And outreach committee, actually, even though there are only 3 or 4 persons, but all the commissioners participate in this, in activities that are organized by the outreach committee. Basically, there are 4 functions. The committee furnishes the annual report. We, one of the outreach committee members, we educate communities about what Office of Human Rights and Equity and also Human Rights Commission do for them. We initiate protective dialogues with communities to listen about their concerns, needs, and suggestions, and also helps communities connect with other county agencies for county matters. For example, the recently going on housing opportunities master plan, and also our general plan for county's future development, aka COCO by design.
Pastor Walker, can you please talk about the African American Community Roundtable? And after that, I'd like to hear from Ms. Brown about the work that the Council of Elders do and how they either work either in tandem, what silos or different lanes they may be in, followed by Ramona with respects to Cove. Because what I'm focused on is I know that we have all these organizations and they have these mission, visions, and purposes, but I want to know, like, how are they in the streets? How are they rolling up their sleeves and like what, like how they're meeting this moment head on. So please, Pastor Walker.
So I have to start with history, right? Because we can't look at, if we talk about what we see now without, it's like a tree. You can look at the fruit of a tree or a leaf on a tree and see a leaf, but if you don't look at the root of the tree, you don't see where the problem started, and then you're not really taking effective approach to solving the problem. So let's begin from the earliest days of the foundation of this experiment called the United States of America, a venture on which the premise of white men being superior to all other human beings and Black people and organizations were leading the call for social justice. The disparate injustices that we see today are a direct reflection of the kinds of brutal, inhumane treatment of those people and being locked out of educational opportunities, housing opportunities, healthcare, jobs, criminal justice, and so much more. Those are the children born of chattel slavery. And the victims of those inhumane experiment have always been fighting for social justice. Darkest days, as was said earlier, during the darkest days of slavery, the Black church was the one source of faith and hope of a rising sun for a new day. Reconstruction saw the creation of schools and organizations and institutions to uplift African American people, Black people at that time. But in 1896, the racially segregated republic closed the 19th century out with the Supreme Court sealing the unjust discrimination practices against the very people whose 246 years of forced labor built the nation. The Ferguson decision was but one more dagger in the hearts of newly freed people. But during that time, the nation was also opening her doors to immigrants from Europe and then later Asian countries, while the government continually established laws to suppress Black to the very lowest rungs of the social ladder. And so fast forward to 2012. Candace Dotson-Reed established convened a meeting of Black churches, civic and professional organizations to share her vision for an umbrella organization that would address the common needs and interests, and gathered this group together, which is today known as the African American Community Roundtable of Howard County. Today, we partner with organizations that are serious about breaking the chains of systemic racism. Our mantra is a unified voice uplifting the African American community. And our focus is on education, health, economic empowerment, and public safety. And we wrap all of that through the lens of racial equity, strategic of some of the activities that we've been working on over the years, included, I'll start with just as recently as last year, was a social justice a town hall. So because of COVID, we've gone virtual. So we've had town halls. We had a town hall on body-worn cameras where we had, I'm sorry, not a town hall, a video campaign where we had students from around Howard County speaking about their concerns for protection and being protected, and encouraging the community for our police to have body-worn cameras. From that, we also had a month of racial equity training done in partnership with our peers at the Horizon Foundation. We did that. That's the first of many that we will do in terms of helping to educate the community on what equity work looks like. And then we also held a forum through Warring Mitchell Law Society entitled 3 Roads to Justice. And this was an educational, legal educational forum to help people understand the different elements of the justice system and how to migrate that justice system. We held a community forum on policing with Senator Ben Cardin and Delegate Vanessa Atterbury and many of our elected and appointed officials in the police system. We then look at racial equity and social justice as it relates to education. Willie Flowers and I sat in on the redistricting commission that was put together last year, or almost 2 years ago now, as we talked about redistricting, and we were voices in what that redistricting looked like and making sure that equity was at the table. The African American Community Roundtable was very instrumental in the development of the final draft of the Educational Equity Policy 1080 that the school system voted on and approved last year as it relates to education. In health, again, with the pandemic, we started using the town hall forum remotely to help educate our community on the issues of COVID, how to stay safe, what real information was out there, having doctors come together. We continue to do that. We also partner with Horizon Foundation and Johns Hopkins University. Right now, we're having vaccine-focused conversations with members of the community to talk about some of the issues. And so those are just a few of the many things that we do, and it's all about community outreach. We're providing food to needy families on the weekends with a program that Tracey Williams started at one of the local schools. It's called Gotcha Backpack. And so we do that. In partnership with the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and St. John's Baptist Church, we did a youth voter mobilization. So those are some of the many things that we do. If it touches the African American community, the African American Community Roundtable is involved in some way.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Ms. Brown, can you talk to us very briefly about your organization and how it does and the work it does in those spaces as well, please?
Sure. We were formed in 1992 in terms of looking at our students and how they are celebrated. So we truly believed if people if the children feel like they are not being seen and that somebody cares about who they are, then they don't have the encouragement. One of the things that we feel is that a lot has been done to the psyche and mindset of the Black community. From us being told, when the history is taught in the United States, it starts with us being slaves. not who we were as a people, not what our strength are as kings and queens. So one of the things that we do is try and build up that self-esteem, try and build up that self-confidence. With the celebrations that we do, we have an Education, History, and Culture Committee. We participate on policies regarding social studies curriculum, unheard perspectives, Black history. We have community academies. Currently, we are doing financial management seminars so families can learn how to communicate with one another and go back to the roots of who we are as a community. We have a strong, as a community, if we go back to our African heritage, we have a strong connection within our families. We need to get our parents to start being educated to teach the children. We need the children to understand that their opinion matters. We do advocacy work. We're one of the few organizations where if a parent has a problem in the school with how their child is being treated, we will go with that individual parent to make sure they understand parent concern process, bullying process, just to let them know that they are not out here by themselves. And if we can show these families that they are not going to be beat by the system, if they know what their rights are, then we can start making progress that says you don't have to go and put your head in the sand that you think you have no other alternative. So we have a community engagement where we are working with different community partners, Making Change organization, Hope Works organization, because we have to get people whole to be able to do the things that they need to do. We have a communications where we're trying to make sure that people know we're available. Communicate with us, let us know what your needs are, and we will find an answer, even if we don't do it all ourselves. So we work with the partners within the community, and our goal is really to make sure if we see anything happening, suspension statistics, diversity in teachers that are in the Howard County school system, disparities in arrests that are happening within the Howard County community. We voice all of those things to make sure that it's brought to the attention of everybody so it doesn't get swept under the rug. And we're a big proponent of data broken out by race, by gender, and by other things such as socioeconomic status. So we are about gathering the information and empowering people to know that they are not alone.
I want to go back to what you said at the beginning when you mentioned, with regards to the children and the awards program. And I want to make sure that I clearly understand, like, what is the reason for, because I understand it because, again, my daughter, she's a fourth grade, my eldest daughter, she's a fourth grade, and she had straight A's this past quarter. And so, we made sure we all got together as a family and watched the awards ceremony. But I want you to kind of break down with the psychology behind that and why that's important and critical.
Yes, from an African tradition, celebrating in public is very important because you see the family support, you see the community support of what it is that you're doing. And it's our heritage that allows us to encourage one another that what you're doing is not being missed. You are important in the grand scheme of things. When the council was started, we didn't have the GPA that the school system wanted to celebrate because we had the heritage and the history of not being educated. We weren't given the same opportunities. So we said, okay, you don't want to celebrate our students? We're going to celebrate our students. So we broke off from the Howard County Public School System, and our numbers have grown ever since in terms of the students that are celebrated. And as people know that somebody is watching and giving them a pat on the back and they walk across that stage when it wasn't COVID, then they see and they come and they shake our hands and we look them in the eye and we say, we are proud of you. Keep up the good work. We watch and see everything you're doing, and we look for one day you to meet the goals that you need to meet. So even if they're not getting that same kind of encouragement in their home environment, we want them to know that there's another group out here, the Council of Elders, who is going to celebrate what it is you're doing. And guess what? For those kids that are close, that might have had 1C, we send out a "We See You" letter that says, you're close, push a little bit harder, and you'll be walking across that stage as well.
That's dope. I'm sorry, that's very dope. I want to hear from Ramona, and then I want to go to Mr. Flowers, because um, I keep saying Pastor. I'll just call him Larry. Are you fine with me just calling you Larry? So Larry talked about some priority areas in the intersection of, I call it police reconstruction, economic empowerment, health, and just professional development. I definitely want Willie to expand on that. I'm curious though, Ramona, how does Cove, how does the work that Cove do? Because I know it's a coalition of what, violence and what does the acronym stand for?
So it's a coalition opposed to violence and extremism.
How does that intersect with the Black community?
So Cove serves as a clearinghouse for human and civil rights agencies across the state of Maryland, as well as federally, private organizations, as well as public organizations are a part of Cove. And what we do is we push for people to report their hate bias incidents. Anything that has happened, if it feels like it's not right, report it, because the more you start reporting what you see might seem as a small thing, if it's happening to you and then now all of a sudden there's 25 other people experiencing the same thing, then there's definitely something that needs to be reported. We work with law enforcement. We try to build a bridge so that we understand where their thought process is coming from when they're dealing with the Black and brown community. And we also work with local organizations to understand what their needs are when they're reaching out to law enforcement, so that we can be that I want to say that bridge, right? Because we don't ever want to burn bridges, but we want to make sure that they are always available for us to go back and forth across, so that we can make a great connection with one another. The other thing that Cove does is that we try to push forward the initiative of human rights. And so one of the things that we had to learn how to do with COVID, and we're still learning with this platform, is we did a Human Rights Day event. And it was a beautiful event with Dr. Sarah Banks. And what we were able to do was to broaden our horizon on what human rights looks like now, because COVID has definitely changed the spectrum. Black and brown communities were heavily served disproportionately. And so now we need to look as individual organizations like the Human Relations Commission, the Diversity of Equity and Inclusion in Baltimore County. How are we working and showing when we come to the Cove table what we're doing? Because Cove is, again, it's just that clearinghouse. But when we all meet up, what is our purpose while we're at this table? Are we out there in the fields working, or have we just hidden behind our computers and not made a difference at all? So Cove collectively is just not a set of people operating and moving, but what we're doing is bringing it together, bringing our policies and our data and analyzing what we're doing and pushing the agenda forward, so that now we know that there's a rise, an attack on Asian Americans. There's always been an attack on African Americans and in the Latinx community. And so now we're looking to push forward. How do we find a resolution to an already heightened problem, and now we're adding to? So that's how Cove is serving the community. I hope that was good for you, Janssen.
It's not whether it's good for me, it's whether it's good for the community, because we want to make sure we educate about what these different organizations, whether it's governmental based or community based, what they're doing. Then also I want to challenge everyone to figure out what can they do in a way that's better. How can they do it in a way that meets immediate needs, etc. And this is whether again, I embrace and applaud everyone. Obviously, what Towanda Mrs. Brown spoke about really resonated with me, because I'm big on this whole, Rocket once spoken about, I'm going to chop the quote up, but he talked about we need to internalize this idea of excellence. And when I see what the Council of Elders and the Community Roundtable are doing, I see that it's doing that. Mr. Flowers.
Janssen, can I just, one of the things that I just wanted to mention, that because everything is so virtual and everything is strongly held with a phone in our hand, with our iPad, with our computer, searching and looking for validation has just become like a rabbit hole. You enter one website and you go to another website. And so what we want to do at this point, because now we're almost a year into this pandemic isolation and how we're working from home, it's now this group thinking. Am I the only person thinking like this? Avoid group thinking. Make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people who have positive thoughts. Make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who are just not limiting their ears to one specific leader. Encourage different opinions. Discuss ideas outside of the people who you've been paying attention. And then carefully consider the choices that you're making, because a lot of times people act on impulse because they heard someone else say something about someone, and they haven't even had an encounter with an African American, with a Latinx individual, with a Asian American. They are just lashing out because they keep falling into these holes and keep falling and falling and falling. So let's try and find out if what we're looking at is perception or reality, and that we're making sure that we're making clear and conscious decisions. This isolation is a lot for a lot of individuals, especially for me. I'm an extrovert, and this is throwing me completely off. But again, as far as the community is concerned, just if you start feeling like these ideas and the way that you're starting to think now is just a little different than what you thought before, let's start clearing our head and just start making sure that we're making conscious decisions, so that when we go back to interacting with people, we're operating in the spirit of excellence. I just wanted to say that.
No, clearly you had the anointing on you for that moment, so I was not going to get in the way of that. Mr. Flowers, so again, how is your organization utilizing and building on those principles of, again, ultimate use survival, and when I look at the areas that we want to not just survive but ultimately thrive in, what are those areas to you, and what is it that the Howard County NAACP is actively doing towards that? And then I want you to wrap up with how is your organization utilizing and building the next generation of leadership? And then I'm going to quickly do a quick final round robin with maybe a 2-minute cap where everyone quickly talks about what your organization is doing to build and utilize and get the next generation involved. So floor is with you, Mr. Willie.
Well, I'm an organizer, and I think that these organizations are kind of motivated or driven by the people who kind of motivate and organize other people. And as a membership organization, membership is the most important thing, fundraising, and then what your programs are. And as an organizer and seeing this stuff with my experience, I believe that leadership is how you get nestled into whatever. And we've kind of shifted with the NAACP to achieve, triggering new membership. So we don't just do the Freedom Fund, we do a 5K, for example. We are in the garden as a program, for example. All these things bring people that wouldn't traditionally be involved with NAACP, but they see what we're trying to do and see the value of the other programming that we have once they get inside. So these types of interactive type activities where you really get nestled into it, inspire people differently, and then they can get to the history of what the NAACP is, because everybody has some idea of what the NAACP does, but they don't understand the committee structure that is framed to kind of zero in on the social determinants that health that cause challenges with Black African people. And I emphasize every time I talk that at this time in history, we as Black African people are being recorded in history for how we die right now. So if we don't do anything to change that, then it's going to continue. So in regard to talking about young people, our structure in the NAACP is set up with that. The Youth Council in the NAACP is the leadership grounding part of the NAACP. So you are born into the Youth Council, and you can get into the Youth and College Division when you're in college. And then there's a movement right now for young professionals to be involved with the NAACP. And Howard County specifically, Janssen participates with the Pipeline organization that specifically focuses on young professionals who are interested in leadership in the community in general. But as always, we want them to be involved with the NAACP and collaborate with all the forces that can come together to make our organization strong. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, but it goes back to your original I guess your original discussion about organizing, if you don't do it, if you don't touch, feel, and try to concentrate power, then we're going to always be behind. And like I said, one thing that we're pivoting to right now, which I think is extremely important for me to say here, is that the future that we see as a country, as a world, has very little to do with the last 50 years, but it has everything to do with the next 50 and jobs that we don't know they're going to create it. That education is going to be required to keep up. And we're behind in that area because we depend so much on public education that's talking about something that, we need to be talking about: diversity, equity, inclusion, but the people leading that conversation are flawed. So we have this reality that just by putting pictures on a website that you're achieving something, and you're not. If this discussion about diversity, equity, what they call it, Jedi, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, it's a Jedi mind trick. If that conversation is not connected to resources that's going to empower people, then you're going to have the same thing we had in the last 20 years. And so the goal is, every time we get up here, we need to talk about the future. We need to talk about, specifically about public education. We need to talk about coding as a mandatory skill to learn, and computer programming as a discipline at every step. If we don't do that now, our children will be harmed, disabled, and we're not going to be talking. They can be diversity all they want to, but if they don't have the skills to participate in the next 20 or 30 years, they're going to be hungry, out of doors, and we're going to have bigger problems than we have now.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who's he's a chief technology officer at a technology company, and he also indicated that to me several years ago when he said you can send all of the American school-age population to school, and they could all focus and major in information technology, and they would still not have enough jobs, because the way everything is going with respect to green technology, and everything is just ultimately data. So now that's a very astute point. I'll do again quick round robin. Ms. Brown and Mr. Walker, in terms of how your organizations are utilizing and building the next generation and getting them involved.
What we realized quite a few years ago is that we needed to have students within the Council of Elders. So we have student members that are currently in Howard County Public School System. We have graduate affiliates that were in Howard County Public School Systems, graduated from Howard County, may currently be in college, and then they can become mentors or apprentices that we mentor. So one of the things that we are big on is passing down wisdom and knowledge, as we do with the African heritage, to make sure that people are built up to be able to withstand different things that come our way. So we know that us on the outside don't know what's going on in the schools. Even though a lot of us have children in the school, we needed those student members. We needed those graduate affiliate members to be able to help us really stay in touch with what's going on.
Thank you. Larry, you're muted, sir.
I'm sorry. The African American Community Roundtable, many of our member organizations have student programs and/or youth ministries, and so we're always encouraging the input of our young people on initiatives that we're working on. One of the things that we're shifting more towards is looking at policies, because all of our organizations are independent organizations, and where we have commonality, we want to work. We work together. We want to work together, but we also are encouraging the inclusion of everything that you just heard from Mr. Flowers and Ms. Brown in terms of getting and mentoring and providing venues for our young people to get involved. I mean, the police body cam video we did was just student and student led, and we're going to be doing more of that. Town halls with students, the youth voter registration. So we're doing more to get our students, And what we're really trying to focus on is the African-American community is not a monolith. There's not one voice that speaks for everybody who comes from the African diaspora. And yet it's important for us to provide opportunities for people to express their voice and to share their gifts and talents. And so we ask everyone who is willing and desiring to roll up their sleeves and get into the game to come on and join us.
Thank you. Ramona, now close out with the Human Rights Commission.
Thank you. So we want to continue our outreach efforts, and that is by engaging the community as well as like the other organization that says we're looking to plan for possible succession. So we want to reach out to those college students and those undergraduate and grad students to see where they are as far as their passion for civil and human rights. We want to keep continuing victims of hate bias incidents to report it. And then again, we're looking to expand membership. And the way that you do that, you can contact us simply through the Howard County Office of Human Rights. For individuals, our membership fee is $25. For organizations, it's $50. And again, like I said, Cove serves as a clearinghouse where we can cross information, and we would love to work with you and have you at the table so that we can assist the community of the state of Maryland, pardon me, as a whole. Thank you.
Okay. Tracey, yeah, how does the commission, I know you're intimately involved with the African American Community Roundtable, but I guess centering on the commission, how does the MLK Commission focus on utilizing and building the next generation?
Well, we gear a good number of our activities toward youth. We also have 2 youth commissioners that serve along with the adult commissioners, and they help us to see things from the youth perspective. The majority of the contests that we do are for youth, and we ask them, critical questions about social justice and Dr. King, so that we can get them thinking in the direction of things that they can do to promote social justice. We also do a competition between the high schools where they come out and they collect canned food and donate that to the food bank. But in all of that, we're still teaching social justice and unity and carrying on Dr. King's mission.
Thank you. Scott and Quee.
Excuse me, before they go, I wanted to say, I know, before they go, I want everybody to stay on after who can, because if there was something you did not get to say, I'm editing a video. So I want to hear from Quee and Scott, of course. And then if we miss some points or how to contact your organization or what we can do to support, I am here and I'm available. And I'm so appreciative. I know Janssen is too, to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks, Marla. So 2 things that we're doing to help engage with youth is, number one, we have a youth commissioner that we've had for many years on our commission, and the youth commissioner sort of serves as a liaison between the commission and Howard County youth and high school students. And then the other thing is we just established last year for the first time a youth award. So we have our, Queen mentioned that we have our awards committee that gives out human rights awards each year. And so we established last year a youth award to encourage the youth of the county to get involved in human rights, civil rights as motivation to do that.
Okay. Yeah, and so to follow Marla's point, if there are closing comments by anyone, and again, I know Marla said she wants to include it in the video, there's no pressure, but if anyone wants to depart with final thoughts, please use this as an opportunity.
Well, not exactly final thoughts, but someone mentioned, they had a question in the chat about the age group between 24 and 50, which is a very wide gap. So I'm in that age group for another few months. But the reality is you can talk to them about the pipeline and what we did following the many rallies with, so many young people after the George Floyd incident. But we saw, a necessity, and the NAACP has been set up to do leadership to young professionals. But we did our own organization in Howard County to kind of embrace that age group, 24 to whatever. but because there is a gap there, and there's a challenge with organizing there in Howard County because it seems like there's no activities for them. So we dealt with that and created an organization. Janssen can kind of talk about it, but it was specifically we recruited and targeted young people who were interested in doing work in the community. Selfishly, we wanted them to work for the NAACP, but we also want them to look at being leaders in elected office, in government office or whatever, in business or whatever, and tying them to mentors and guides who can help them. Because that's one thing that's needed. It's certainly something that we don't take advantage of because we talked a lot about just scarcity of access to things in the Black community, but we don't talk about the fact that once we certain professionals got to where they needed to be, they didn't even know how to reach back and network and build young people up, and we have to remind ourselves that we do have to reach back.
And my closing thought would be that in order for us to make a difference, we have to understand who we are. So many years we have been beaten in this mission. And unless we understand who we are and where we come from and what we have within us to make us excellent, make us to be counted, to make us to be heard, we're going to continue to fall back. And so we have got to stop being reactive and start making smarter moves and smarter decisions based on us thinking things through. And once we can get people to stop feeling like they're victims, but to understand what you have within you, and that people don't get to make a choice on your behalf unless you give them control, then we cannot start taking control as a people.
Yeah, this is where you play redemption song in the background.
Well, the other piece is what she's saying is we have to value the people who are not there. I mean, and that's where I ain't gonna say we have a challenge with that because we think that when we're doing all this organizing, we're talking about that we're hitting a lot of people. We're not. We're usually just hitting the people who we could walk to their houses anyway. So we have to continue to have the spirit of the fact that there's a child who is not listening to any of this, but if we keep grinding, keep doing events, it could wake them up. And so that's something that we have to have as a priority and a standard so that we can inspire folks who are not at the table, who don't know how to show up. And we expect people to be perfect when they show up. That doesn't happen when you're doing grassroots organizing. You got to figure out how to get to them because, sometimes they're intimidated by all this presentation that we make and they don't come to us.
I so much appreciate what Willie Flowers just said because we see that in so many aspects of our community that we want to expect people to show up at a place where they may not yet be, and yet we forget that we all had a journey to take. And it's so important for us to always be open to reach back and help others in our communities. And I call them our cousins. They're all our relatives. It's always important for us to reach back and recognize that we didn't get to where we are without the help of somebody along the way.
That's why I say every time I get into anything, I say everybody got a Willie in their family. And that starts a conversation. And that breaks through a lot of stuff. And you can, start from there. But
no one has a Willie Flowers. You're unique, man.
No, I'm number 5. But the point is that you got to find a tie, and then we have to have a spirit that doesn't create barriers, so you can feel approachable to anyone. And sometimes we do that, and all this stuff we do in fraternities, in these organizations where you got to pay to get in, and all this. We create this elitism that should not be what we're remembered by. We should be remembered by breaking that down and taking whatever we have, whatever service. If you're doing something one day, if you thought about something that you thought was a gift to somebody, you don't want just a certain individual get it. You want anybody to pick it up so they can carry it on.
The beauty of this last year, I think with the combination of a pandemic and then the George Floyd incident and so much other that we've seen is, my hope is what Willie just said would make all of us, as we sit home and physically distance, not want to go back to where we came from at where we ended 2019, but wanting to go forward and looking at our organizations, recognizing that all of our organizations were founded on the principles of reaching back and uplifting our people. And yet many of us have gotten to a point where we're above that now, and we forget whose shoulders we stand on. It's so important that we're always reaching back.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I know that we're at 5:13, and if there are individuals that have to jump off, I know I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to make final comments. And I just know that I am deeply appreciative of everyone's time and the comments. I mean, this is what I call soul food, because it's one of there are moments where you sometimes feel you're working in isolation or life's pressures can get you down. But when you see, and I know that all the individuals here, obviously I work very closely with Willie, and I've seen how all the stuff that he's talking about, he lives it. If he just wants people to come and do the work, and he doesn't care, and he'll remind you and admonish you if you feel it's like, look, just have someone come. I mean, and just have them do. And sometimes you don't know. Like I'll be honest and say he's taught me to look at the bigger picture in terms of, for example, the garden. That's his background. When I started going to the NAACP, I kept talking about we should do this, and so he just called bluffs until the point where now it's there, and I was like, oh shoot, this is crazy, and then before you know it, and the beauty of the work that you guys are all doing is that you don't know who it sparks, you don't know what it does. Like there are times where I mean, it's not lost to me now that this garden that we had talked about, and now it's there, and you have all these people who typically are not familiar with the need for black skin, melanated skin, to get vitamin D, to learn how to grow nutrient dense foods, and he always calls me the what is it, teacher's pet, because I bug out when I get to be in this space, because it's not lost on me. Our farm is called the George Washington Carver Farm. And it is not lost on me that there could be some random dude that comes in that lives in apartment housing that sees this, and it sparks something that builds, that comes back 20 years from now, and he creates the next solution to cancer, Alzheimer's. Because I was that kid that when I came to this country, grew up in apartment housing, but when I had the opportunity, it was like all this stuff just kind of came back. And so I know that there are many kids, many children here in Howard County that we could get 10 of them in the garden, only one of them might become some social justice engineer that realizes and solves some of the biggest climate justice problems that we have. So like, this is not, so I affirm everyone in what you're saying, because this is definitely not about us. This is about the ancestors, and this is about honoring them, and it's about building a better future for those to come. So I definitely applaud you all for that.